All right. Our guest this week on The Real Van City is Cathy Thorpe. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Cathy joined Nurse Next Door as president in 2014 with the mission of growing the business across both Canada and the US. Under her tenure, the company has accelerated its growth and now has over 300 locations across North America. In 2016, Cathy was promoted to president and CEO with the goal of taking the organization to global heights and expanding its international footprint. Since then, Nurse Next Door has opened master franchises in both England and Australia and is currently exploring other markets. An accomplished leader, Cathy brings over 2 decades of leadership experience in the retail industry to Nurse Next Door. She previously served as president of Please Mom and director of Canadian operations for The Gap and The Gap Kids, where she was responsible for over 150 stores and over 1,000 employees. Cathy's diverse experiences have inspired and enabled her to accelerate growth and disrupt the traditional home care industry model. However, her business goals go beyond market expansion. Through bold kindness, her culture and leadership philosophy, she has developed self-led leaders across the brand's system, resulting in an average NPS score of 70 plus among clients and caregivers. Through her new book, Bold Kindness, A Caring, More Compassionate Way to Lead, to be released January 2024, Cathy is bringing her bold kindness philosophy to other business leaders and motivating them to disrupt traditional business practices. Cathy's leadership was recognized during the COVID-19 pandemic, where she was a recipient of a BC CEO of the Year award for the Award of Distinction category. You've had a good run. You've had what do you
it ages me, right? So
does it age you or inspire you and energize you? I guess it depends on the day.
Hey, listen, it's been a journey and a great journey and lots of learnings along the way.
But when I read that, it sounds like it just kind of sounds overwhelming for me to read that and process that and imagine what you must have on your plate. But, here we are on this Friday afternoon, casually sitting, having a conversation. You don't seem any more stressed or nervous than I do about this conversation. So how it has been a journey, but how do you kind of compartmentalize all that responsibility and overseeing so many employees and so much expansion and the goals of the company and things like that? How do you kind of maintain a life of seemingly blissful state?
Seemingly blissful. That's a great question. I think for me, that's actually been part of the journey of who I want to be as a leader. And, I unapologetically say that I work with only great people. And when you work with great people, you get out of their way. And I will say that I have a self-led team that are better than me at everything they do. So I get out of their way. And that's really, where I've had the opportunity over these years to develop this concept of bold kindness and, who I wanted to be as a leader and what I wanted our culture to feel like at Nurse Next Door.
Nice. Yeah, that's great. And I love leadership. Like I've been working as an engineer for 17 years and, leadership positions and my next role coming up more and more. But in the consulting engineering world, like I've seen good leadership and other leadership.
Right.
So and I'm sure everyone has.
Right?
Yeah, for
everyone
sure.
has. Yes.
So I guess my question would be where did this initiative start? Where did bold kindness come from? Where did the strive for leadership for you? Were you existing and working in a state that you recognized that it could be done better and then started piecing towards getting there?
Yeah. It starts at the beginning of your career journey. And, you've got your bosses and then you become a boss. And, it was really, I look at my time with The Gap and I had some great bosses and I had some bosses that I didn't want to work for. And I also looked at my own leadership style and I was learning from the good bosses and the bad bosses. And I think at some level, I felt incongruent with who I wanted to be as a leader. I just didn't know how to express it or really what was going on at the time. And so, and so what are those feelings? Fear-based. You felt controlled. You felt like you were put into a box and couldn't make decisions, and you wanted to use your brain. You had so much to give and not the opportunity to give it. And those were just some of those feelings that I connected with. And I think they sat in my gut for years. And then it was really that opportunity to start with Nurse Next Door in the role that I had, that I was like, okay, wow, who do I want to be as a leader? And I really went back to those feelings, and I literally sat in those feelings. And it's like, okay, what did that feel like? Why did that happen? How can I do this differently? So yeah, it was really that started that leadership journey at the Gap, with learning a ton, but it's the good and the bad, right?
Yeah, that's really cool. And yeah, so today we're going to talk about leadership, and we're going to talk about the book coming out, Bold Kindness, as well. But yeah, leadership. When you were saying that, I was thinking about a buddy of mine who's gone out on his own over the last 5 or 8 years, whatever it is, and started his own engineering firm. And
good for him.
Yeah, right. I'm like, wow,
that's awesome.
Yeah, and here in Vancouver, doing amazing. He's got 4 other partners now.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah, and like 40 employees.
Nice.
So wow, right? Mm-hmm. But one of the reasons he did that was to create a company and a culture. Mm-hmm. And just like you were saying, kind of not being in those similar feelings of feeling cramped and repressed, and not being able to express yourself and do all those things. That being said, it's been hard and challenging from what I've heard to follow through on that and create the place where his people want to work, because trust is one of the biggest issues that he needs to build in. So it's different, I guess, when you have to lead people and you have to get results and lead with trust and do all of that. So I guess the question is, like, what does that mean to, like, for him to go back and sit in those feelings when he was working for someone else and it was hard and challenging and he didn't like several things? What does that mean to carry those feelings into where he is now as a leader and make sure he doesn't repeat making his people feel the same?
Yeah, I mean, that's the challenge, right? And so, I go back to what you're talking about with trust. And when you say the word trust and how do you build that, it's about getting to know real people, human beings, right? And I think that business today really doesn't spend enough time getting to know who that person is, what makes them tick, what are their dreams, what are their goals. And, I think when you build that level of a relationship with someone, you're building trust, right? And then you can figure out how you're going to show up as a leader for that person, because it's an individual person that's going to need something different than that other person. And foundationally, it's like, how do you develop that trust? And I think it's through getting to know human beings.
Yeah, it's kind of obvious, but it really works, because if you know what the person that you're working with and talking to, what their desires are and what they want to do on the weekend and how they want to thrive in different ways, then you work with them differently. So how have you? But then again, I keep going to engineering and consulting, and there's 40 hours in the week, and we ideally are charging to a project each time. So there's not there is a lot of time to get to know the people you work with, but it's not always as structured as it could be. So what have you done at Nurse Next Door to get to know the people that you work with? Do you have retreats? Do you have monthly meetings? Do you have things that are set up, or has it been more organic than that?
Yeah, we have lots of things in place, so to speak. We have a Bold Dreams and Goals program. So we work with people on what their bold dreams and goals are. They create vision boards. So we have those tactical, process-driven things. But I would say that, it starts with myself and how I show up as being vulnerable, and how do I share my life and my experiences with people? Because I think when they see me doing that, then it gives them permission and they feel like they can do the same thing. So it's not as much how it happens, but it's just that like, where do you get to? What's that level of vulnerability for myself as a leader and how I have to show up? And I'll give you an example. So 2.5 years ago, I lost my husband to colon cancer. So, my kids who are, Sophia is 17, Jackson's 19. They lost their father. I lost my husband. And, he was sick for 2 years before he passed away. And I will say I brought all of that to work. I wasn't, we're in home care. It's a home care company. We take care of people in their homes when they're sick. And I wasn't going to hold back on that. And I didn't hold back on that. And I will say that Nurse Next Door and I and my kids went through that journey of, Harry being sick. So he was part of that journey at that time. And then when he passed away, it was really this journey of what, I was going through, my kids were going through with grieving, and just how Nurse Next Door showed up and really, they were all there for me. And, I didn't hide anything. And so when they saw me showing up and being that vulnerable, you'd be amazed at what happens and how people, they open up and they share things and they say what they want and they challenge themselves. And it's just beautiful. And, what you're left with is this, it's a tribe, it's a community, it's this family that really comes together and cares about each other.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a living thing, right?
It
The
is.
company,
It is.
and I guess you're if you think about how you're feeding it with the input of how you show up, like how the people show up are feeding this living creature. And so if you show up and you're not being authentic and vulnerable and you're hiding things and there's this nervous energy, you're going to create kind of this ball, this energy, this company that reflects that. Is that a simplified version?
Yeah, and when you look at business today, it's like we're afraid to show who our authentic selves are, and really that's the beauty of leadership. When I go back to you were saying about your friend, how does he create this culture that's different than what he had before? Well, it's like being real, being authentic, having, real conversations. And those are the things that are going to help build something that's different, because that's not happening in the workplace today. And it's funny because I think so many people can resonate with these feelings. And, for me, I'll go back to when I started just really diving into bold kindness and the whole concept, it was this whole conversation of people aren't engaged in the workplace. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I just don't want to be leading an organization where people feel that way. How can we have something different where people are excited to come to work? And I don't know, I bring that up because that is really what we have to solve to. We spend a lot of time at work, and wow, to say that people aren't engaged and not take that really seriously. Yeah, that for me, it's a big problem out there.
Yeah, huge. Totally get it.
Yeah.
And first decade of my career, totally disengaged and slowly started chipping away at it after that. And more so in recent years, showing up more as myself. But yeah, there still is that fear, I guess, out there that if you really show up as your wacky self, people are going to judge you, or you could get fired or something if you have different views or whatever it may be. But if the leader of the organization is showing up, and I think I read it in the intro of this book, it's like you naturally, like, it makes sense that if you are going through one of the hardest parts of your entire life, you're not going to turn it off when you show up for work. And for the people you work with to see that, they must be rather inspiring. So they can have bad days too, right? We're all going to have bad days. But to be able to have a bad day and come and do the job and get supported by your teammates, I think that's kind of what you're after.
It is what you're after, and it's all you can ask for, right?
Yeah.
We're all trying to do our best and have a lot of things going on in our lives. And if we're not putting that all together, then that's pretty difficult.
Yeah. And okay, well, now I need to ask, like, as the leader of the organization, and we all want to be authentic and share what we're doing to the right extent, within the right boundaries. But in this day and age, there is a lot of cancel culture going on. If you, depending on what you do on the weekend, what you believe in, what you post, and all this stuff. So how like what how do you lead your team and your group, or what are the standards for if someone is going to a protest about this or posting about this online, and is it a completely open free speech sort of environment, or what sort of advice would you have for uh, the folks that you work with?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, first of all, I'm not really on. I'm on social media, but I don't do a lot of posting, so I'm not of that era.
Hmm.
But when I think about that, it's well. Let me go back to what we call self-led leaders, and we only work with self-led individuals at Nurse Next Door. And for what that means is you're an adult and you make adult decisions and you don't need to be managed. So, you're going to show up on time. You're going to get your work done. You are going to, if you have questions, you're going to ask those questions. If you have something to say to someone, you're going to say it to them. You're not going to say it to someone else. And I could go on and on about that. And so going back to your question, we work with self-led people. So they're making adult decisions. So I trust that they're going to make the right decisions and have the right level of integrity in the decisions they make to protect themselves and the organization.
Yeah, because ultimately, if we are working with an organization, we do need to make adult decisions on that's very well
Right?
phrased.
Yeah.
Like, come
Yes.
on, like really, right?
Yeah.
Adult
Let's show
decisions.
up as an adult. And for me, this was really, it was about probably 8 years ago. And the role of manager, I'm like, why do we really have the role of manager? And I'm like, they're actually there to manage poor performance. So what if we just don't have poor performance? And so why do we? It's like, well, because we don't, if you have people that aren't acting like adults, they need to be managed. And that to me is like, well, let's just get rid of that problem.
Yeah,
Right. And let's fully step into, we will only work with a self-led team, and you need to show up and be self-led. And when you are self-led, you will have the freedom and autonomy to absolutely love your job.
cool. Now how about for someone who is maybe in their early 30s, and they have managers and several layers of them, and they're relatively early in their career, and for the most part they're going and doing a job, and they're getting a paycheck, and they're not affording any house around here, but that's a separate conversation. How and they have parameters of what job they need to work in, but maybe they get a little frustrated, right? And they're kind of stuck in this, and they can't really see a future 10 or 20, 30 years down the road, and see where they may work. How does someone like that sort of be self-led, kind of outside of their current role, and build up themselves, I guess, to potentially grow within an organization and become more in a leadership role? So I guess I'm saying, like, how do they kind of expand beyond the confines of what their manager thinks they can do without ruffling too many feathers?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So I first of all go to, you can never look at your boss to motivate you. You're responsible for motivating yourself. And when you do that, you can do amazing things because you are inspiring and leading yourself, who what you can do, what you can't do, the things you want to learn, how you want to grow. So I would say that. And then I would say, listen, it's what I can only say what I've done over the years. When I was with the Gap, I started as a sales associate, and I ended up doing various roles and moving to Germany, running the German organization, and then coming back and running Canada. And I will say that I was always, so if I was in one role, I was having that job description for the next role. And I was sure as heck working towards fulfilling all of the pieces of that job description. I was asking for feedback on what I needed to do to go to the next level. It was entirely my responsibility to understand what it took to get to that next level. And when you are empowered to do that, you're not waiting around waiting around for anyone else to get you there. You're getting there yourself.
Nice. So you show up and you complete your role. You have an eye on your next step. Maybe you don't know where it is 10 or 20 years down the road.
I should think you should have goals and aspirations. Mm-hmm. I remember I'm working with an individual at Nurse Next Door, and he's been with the company for 17 years. And, about 5 years ago, I said, what do you want to do, ultimately with your career? And he said, I want to be a CEO. And so, you have to step into these things, and you have to be bold and have these huge career desires and dreams, and then go for it. Know the steps that it would take to get there.
Yeah. And that's relatively, so that's achievable for that individual. You're like, it may take 2 years or 5 years or 20 years. But if they want it, and if they're humble enough to figure it out, they can be shown the steps, and they can get there if they still want it after 10 or 20 years.
I would say most of all, you have to be a learner. Mm-hmm. You have to be open to continuous learning. You have to be open to receiving feedback, asking for feedback, and really wanting to, be a better version of yourself, and just have that continuous learning mindset.
Yeah, that's amazing. Maxine Cunningham, CEO of Pick My Brain, which is a startup, and it's e-commerce for knowledge. And this is the episode that's out this week, which I'm just so excited about it. It's so cool. But she sat in that chair and said she can only expand her company by the same degree that she expands her mental capacity. Mm-hmm. So if you're going through this expansion with Nurse Next Door, big push into the US and globally as well, do you find that you need to personally expand and be able to take on more capacity, and you need to learn how to grow the organization? Or do you kind of have a roadmap figured out, and you're just more so going through the steps?
I think you are 100% responsible for continuous learning as a leader. And if you're not doing that, then you will fall behind, and you will not do the best thing for people or the organization. And so, I spend a lot of time in continuous learning. And I'll give you an example. So, I've got this book coming out, and I'll be honest, I've never really put myself out there in a large way. It's not something I'm entirely comfortable with. I will in the environment that I know, but out to the world, it's not easy. And so, about a year ago, I'm like, okay, so if I'm really going to go after this book and really step into what I see as an opportunity to talk about bold kindness and how leadership can be done differently, then I better sure as heck be ready to step into that. And what do I need to do to get better at stepping into that? And so one of the things was I started working with a lady named Valerie, and she has helped me to develop, just being here today, being able to articulate myself. How do you dig deep in the conversations? How do I use my physical presence as well as my mental and emotional presence to be able to articulate things at a level where people can learn and understand? And so, you have to be pretty real with yourself and say, okay, what am I good at? What am I not good at? And I better get better at that. So that's the fun of it though. I enjoy that very much, because it's when you're uncomfortable, you're learning.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so great, but so uncomfortable. But that's such a common thing for a lot of people. Want to put ourselves out there, but there's many different blocks along the way. But one is like, wow, if I'm the leader, and even in leadership, like if I'm the CEO or I'm the boss or I'm the manager, I'm the leader, like a lot of people sometimes go towards like it's all about me, right? And so if I'm writing a book and I'm promoting it, how a lot of people are uncomfortable with putting themselves out there and kind of positioning themselves as the expert that knows everything, even though that's not what the message is. So it's a very common problem. But so it's interesting to read your bio with decades and decades of leadership experience, and then have you pinpoint on how it's been challenging in the last little while go into more of a public role to share what you have learned. So what has that mindset shift been, if you could pinpoint it? Have you arrived at the point where, okay, I actually know a lot of great stuff that can help people, so I need to get over my block to get that out there and help them?
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where you're like, okay, do you believe in yourself enough? Right. And do you believe in what you're saying enough? And I really do. And, I truly, well, not only do I believe in it, I've seen the results of it, and I've seen what's happened to the organization. I've seen what's happened to people and their development. I see what happens with our retention and the years of service that we have in the organization. And when you look at what are the main problems out there, it's the opposite, right? Like, it's hard to find great people. No, it's not. It's hard to keep great people. No, it's not. It's hard to get great results. No, it's not. So it was like, oh, okay, Cathy, like, step into this, go and share this with the world, because there's, it doesn't need to be for everyone, but it's a version of what we can have that looks different, and I think is current to what the world is asking for today.
Okay.
So
yeah, amazing.
do I step into that or don't I step into it? Well, I better, because that's a shame if I don't.
Yeah, I love it. All right, so let's talk about some tangible things for leaders then, in terms of engagement and retention, and finding good people, and keeping them there, and empowering them. So what I guess for at Nurse Next Door, over the years that you've been there, how have you taken people that when you showed up as president, and then president and CEO, how have you engaged them to kind of go from people that show up to do their job to they are now thriving in their career and quite happy to be there? What are sort of like one or two things that you've done to engage them?
Well, to me, it's all about the culture, right? And this is where I'll go back to bold kindness. And, bold is about having direct, real conversations with someone to help them get better at their job, and to give them that real-time feedback, and not be sitting on it, but to want to help them to develop. And then you add the kindness into it, and you're going to have that conversation. Well, first of all, you're going to know that person. And so you're going to know how to speak to them in a kind way, that they're going to hear your message, and they're going to be motivated by that message, as opposed to only hearing what they're doing wrong. And so that's really where bold kindness came from. And that, to me, is what the culture of Nurse Next Door represents. And that's what we have with our employees and the people that share, that we're in those conversations, and we're doing it the right way. So I think you have to create a culture that, supports direct conversations. And it has to be, a culture that is kind and caring, and ultimately knows that human beings are working there.
Yeah, no, again, it makes perfect sense, but it's not always in practice out there. Because what I've seen in the engineering space, it's people that are good technically, they somehow by default get put into management positions, and that's not their forte. And now I love working with engineers, and how we kind of systematically place things out. So how do you train and teach leadership for a technical person perhaps going into a management role? Like, do you break down how to speak kindly to people that you work with? And it seems like a strange thing to have to discuss and lay out, but it's truthfully something that's necessary.
I'm going to go back to, do you know the person? Have you asked them? Right? Like, it's like don't try to know what that person needs. That person's going to tell you what they need. And, I think kindness, well, we all know how we want to be treated, right? And isn't this just about treating others as how you want to be treated? Taking the time to care about them. What else would I say? Like, kindness is, it's wanting that other person to succeed, not fail. It's about you wanting that other person to feel great. It's not about you. It's about them. Um, it's about you giving them the space and autonomy to really go after their role, to make decisions. And sometimes those decisions are going to be the right ones, and sometimes they're going to be the wrong ones. And it's like, how do you stay in that neutral place to allow them to go through the experience of what they learned when something worked, and also to go through the experience when something didn't work? Because that's the beauty, right? When you can have that space and you hold neutrality with it, then people learn and grow, but they're doing it on their own, right?
But you must have had experiences over the years where you've given someone the autonomy and you've given them everything, you've gotten to know them, but still they haven't engaged in the work, and still they haven't completed their job or their role or grown, and they've probably had to let a couple people go. So what in those instances is it because it's not a match for the role that they're in and who they are, or is it perhaps something from their personal life that is preventing them from being engaged in the work? And like, would you have done everything you could and gotten to know them and given them all the tools, but then you have to, I imagine, get to a certain place and go, it's not going to work anymore?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to go back to, were they self-led? Right. And, like, start there. And then I think it goes down to, it's self-led is not for everyone, right? Like, some people truly do want to be told what to do. And so that sometimes comes down to not being a culture fit, and that's okay. And we help people. I think, getting rid of people. I think it's about being in conversations about what a person wants to do, what makes them, what are they passionate about? What do they get excited about? And sometimes, they take on a role that's not as exciting as for them as they thought it would be. And that's okay. And let's have that conversation, right? And because that's fine. And how do we figure it out so that you can go and find what your passion is and let us help you, right? And so that's the conversations we want to have.
It's more of an alignment issue, right? It's not someone's not right for the organization or something, or there's something wrong with them. It's like what they want to do is not in alignment with the organization. So it's okay.
It's totally okay. And let's help that individual find what they're passionate about.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so what are you excited about for the book that's coming out, Bold Kindness, coming out in January? What are when someone picks up the book in January, early next year, what are some of the themes of the book that they're gonna be able to grasp and pull into their role as a leader or a self-led leader as well? What can we expect from the book?
Well, I mean, listen, it goes through all of the tactical approaches of what you can do to bring bold kindness into the culture of your organization. I'm going to go back to at the foundational level. It's not about top-down leadership. It's about how are you you're in the role of mentoring and developing your team. And how do you show up in that role, and how do you show up as a person, and how are you continuing to work on yourself so that you can be that type of leader? Because it's not about you. It's about your people. It's about your team. It's about the clients. It's about everyone else. And it's how do you step into that? And that is what bold kindness is. And to me, it's a completely different leadership approach than what the typical norm is out there in the business world.
Nice. It seems like a good audio book to listen to, like a chapter or half a chapter on the way to work. Apply what you'll learn throughout the day, and then kind of reflect on the way home and go, "Oh, I didn't actually do that, right?
Yeah,
I didn't do that, or I nailed that." Maybe I'm gonna drive to work the next day and re-listen to that chapter and try to apply, better listening with people, more coaching and mentoring as opposed to managing and things like that. But we got to be in motion to apply these things.
And you have to really sit. I always say, are you sitting in what's uncomfortable? Right? Like, so if you go and try something, that day and it's uncomfortable, then when you're driving home, sit in it and figure out why it's uncomfortable, because that's really where the beauty of the learning is. because you get to figure that out and say, oh, okay, it's because I feel this. Oh, let's do this then. And maybe I'll have a better approach.
So should we be aiming if in 2024? I can't believe we're talking about New
My
Year's.
gosh, yes, it's true.
Oh, whatever. It's common, but New Year's resolutions, and I actually like that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
like, what are we going to do
Yeah,
and
it
grow
is.
into
It's good.
next year?
Yeah, you're right.
But should that kind of be a goal? Like pick up bold kindness on January 2nd.
January 2nd.
January
yes.
2nd. Pick up bold kindness January 2nd. Start working through it. But should the goal to be rather uncomfortable at least once a week for the first quarter of 2024, and that is showing us growing as leaders?
That's a great point. And yes, I think we should all feel uncomfortable growing and learning. And yes, if that's all the time, but I love the fact that you're saying it for the first quarter. And I would hope that there are pieces of the book that are going to feel uncomfortable for people. And therefore, we're doing something different. And that's all I can ask for is just my message on how do we do this differently so that we can have people who are excited to come to work and feel like they are fulfilled and living great lives.
So where does your passion for leadership come from, and where does your drive to make people come to work and enjoy their work come from? Like, you could just run the organization and do great work and have people that like to work there for the most part, and that be it. But what's like, why write the book, and why talk about it? Why put it out there? Why go through the extra work to do all that? Because who knows what reward or whatever it may be out the other end. Like where did that original spark come from to share and I think what I may know one answer that it could be, but what do you think that real passion to teach and learn and lead comes from?
I think I just love working with people. Like I love working with people and I love seeing them thrive and grow and develop. And, it's just that experience of seeing what worked, actually feeling what worked and feeling what didn't work over the years, trying new things here at Nurse Next Door and just loving where this has gone and just wanting to share that and express that and have the opportunity to help people do it differently. Because that's, coming out of COVID, the world changed and we are no longer in the same place and people want things done completely differently. And so, how are we just looking at those things that are out there on different viewpoints? And that's what this book has really inspired me to bring across to the world.
Cool. And what have you learned or had to, and you mentioned previously about, being in a more public space, you've had to learn and grow into that. But what specifically about putting the book together have you learned about yourself, and how did the process go of writing the book, and how do you feel going about a month and a bit away from the launch?
Yeah, I mean it's a long journey, and I would say where it started and where it is today are two very different places. And you have to have a great team around you, and you have to have people that say the real thing and what they like about the book, what they don't like about the book, what can we change, and just being really open and vulnerable to the feedback that you need to receive to make it the best that you can make it.
Nice. But also have the direction and knowing and vision that you have of what you want to achieve and what perhaps the message is. And you probably had to say no a couple times.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, but it's a journey, and it's surrounding yourself with great people who are going to give you great feedback.
It's interesting. I like people too.
Mm-hmm.
Not every day, all day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm an introvert and like books and things like that. But it's interesting you say you like people, and like are you an extrovert? Are you?
I'm not. I'm actually an introvert.
So do you go and you be around people? And some days they give you energy when you see them thriving, and then you're happy to have time to yourself on the weekend or the evenings.
Yeah, I do the things that replenish my energy. I love being outdoors. I love running. I love, I love being a mom, right? And that just, all of those things just replenish my energy and give me that ability to walk through those doors every day and get pretty excited about being there.
Yeah, that's amazing. What's your process for making sure the run? I'm a runner as well, and doing the outdoor things and doing the ocean things. I was in Tofino earlier this week, so
Oh, nice.
I am just cured. I am just lit up right now. It feels so incredible. Just being in the ocean,
Yep.
it's so magical.
Yeah. It's therapeutic.
Oh,
right?
it's incredible. So you make that a priority, and how do you I guess turn your mind off from all the CEO things when or do you if you're out for a run or a walk in the forest?
I've always been very fluid with it. Like sometimes I turn it off, sometimes I don't. I don't really worry about it. You know, I enjoy thinking about things, and whatever that thing is I want to think about, I think about it. And it's the same as, going on holidays. I don't mind having work to do when I go on holidays. And I like having a fluid life. It's not for everyone, but it works for me.
I like that too because when I go for a walk to the grocery store down on Fourth, sometimes I'm like, all right, I got 45 minutes. Uh, maybe I have something to think about. Like, what am I going to think about?
Right?
And
Yes.
who knows where it goes? And
Yes.
maybe I'll be done thinking about it by the time I get there. But it's kind of an intentional time with your brain and where you're going or having a problem to solve. It's kind of fun.
It's so fun. And I love being on that run where your head goes into that place of flow and you're just thinking about that problem and trying to solve it. And, you can go back to work on Monday and just have some really great thoughts that, you can bring to what you're doing that day.
I sometimes get some good thoughts. Well, I think they're good. Who knows what happens with them afterwards when I'm on my run, but I have to repeat. I either have to stop and pull over and write them in my phone, or I have to repeat them in my mind as I'm running and then write them in my phone. But there was an instance over the last couple months where I didn't do that, and this great thought that I had it's gone.
It was gone.
It hasn't come back yet. So whatever, someone else can.
Yeah, it'll come back.
Yeah, so it's fine. Great question for me specifically in this instance, and I'll take advantage of you being here. About someone showing up in a new job, a new place for the first time, which I'm doing coming up. Very excited about it, and I've never been as excited to show up in a new place, irrespective of how it's gonna go. But what kind of advice would you have? Like I have a destination in mind that's possible, but it's and I was talking to my buddy about this 2 days ago driving back from Tofino. He's like, so how are you going to show up on the first day? Because it's so important how you do show up and what your intentions are and how you treat people and all those first impressions, because you have a clean blank slate. So if you have I believe if you have some sort of intention in mind, like I'm not just going there to do the job and wilt away for the next few years. I'm going there to kick some ass. So it's so important, I believe, how you show up. What are your thoughts on that? On how you, and again, it's sort of like if I'm showing up with a blank slate, that's one thing. But if someone who's been at a role for 10 years, they can also start showing up differently if they choose to empower themselves or they have a new destination in mind for their role. So what are your thoughts on, I guess, showing up in a new place and what that means?
Sure. Well, first of all, I think it's having that time of self-reflection before you walk through the doors and actually saying, how do I think I showed up in my last job, right? Like, what did I do well? What didn't I do well? How do I want to look going into these doors? And being really honest with yourself. I think you start there. And then I think you go through the doors and you get to know people. You get to know people, and then I find that people, when they go into a new role, they always feel like they have to be doing stuff so quickly. I think that's really hard. You don't know the culture. You don't know how the company works. And I always say, just get to know people and how we work, and just take that time. And it's going to feel like it's actually too much time. But like, I always remember starting at Nurse Next Door, and it was a good 3 months before I would go into work every day. And it was that feeling like, oh, there's a fire hose shooting water out at me. And a decision that I would have made, that I made last week, this week, I probably would do it differently. And so giving yourself that space and time to get to know things.
And I would think the best impact that I could have going there and or someone, not me, however, we're talking about me, showing up at a new position would be if everyone else got lit up in their own ways a touch more. But, me not really having to do anything other than getting to know them.
Yeah, get to know them. Figure out how the place works. Figure out what your job is and what you're going to be required to do. And just don't push it too hard, too fast.
So how do you get inspired to, as an introvert who likes their time, how do you get inspired, or how do you navigate, I guess, perhaps situations where the other humans kind of drain the energy out of us? How do you navigate that? Or are you do you have certain tactics to avoid that, or do you have certain processes to kind of guard your energy?
Yeah. Well, I think, I look at my retail days and it's sales, right? And so you show up every day in full energy. And that's how, I do it today. And that's who I'm going to show up as a leader in an organization. And, if it means I need to go for a walk sometimes, so be it. If it means that I want to go for lunch with, the leadership team, mentorship team, because they give me energy because they're so awesome, then that's what I'm going to do. And so I guess it's like taking those moments or things for you because you know what you're going to need. And so showing up with a lot of energy and then taking the time to replenish as you need to. And I would say, yeah, at the beginning, it's going to be even more, right? And over time, it gets less and less in terms of needing to replenish that energy. But yeah, just be really cognizant of it at first.
Yeah, there's a lot of power in the old walk around the block.
Right?
A
Exactly.
lot of power.
Little, fresh air, yeah. Blue sky day.
And leave the phone on the desk and go for a walk around the block. Yeah. It's miraculously powerful.
Yeah.
But what are you most excited about coming up 2024? The book must be one of those things, but what else within the organization and yourself, your leadership, or what else is top of your mind these days?
Listen, we continue to grow very quickly as an organization. That is so much fun. And, we always talk about this concept of continuous improvement. And for me, continuous improvement is seeing something in the organization that doesn't work anymore and getting really excited about it, because that means we just grew. So that system or process that's not working, it's because the company grew and that no longer serves the company well. And it's like, wow, we got here with that. Can you imagine where we can go when we figure out another system or process? So, it's that ongoing concept of continuous improvement and looking at the organization in a way that, there's always things to improve upon and getting excited about it, as opposed to being fixed in your mindset. This is about having a mindset of abundance and seeing the possibilities of what you can achieve.
So what's possible?
Oh my gosh, I think we'll be in more countries. I think that we will, have another 100 locations across the globe, and we will just continue to help, so many communities and keeping people at home, right? People want to be at home. They want to be taken care of. They want to not be lonely. And we have the opportunity to make a big difference in people's lives in many communities across now many countries. And, one of the things we talk about at Nurse Next Door is happier aging. And happier aging is really, what did you used to love doing that you don't do anymore? And how do we bring that experience to that client and work with them at achieving those moments of happiness and joy in their lives again? And it could be as simple as, wanting to go for a walk and being able to go for a walk because you have a companion. It could be as simple as you get to go for lunch with your friends because you have someone who can drive you there. We think it's big things, but it's actually the little things that make a big difference in people's lives.
And it's not a problem that's going away. I read one of your posts or quotes about 10,000 new baby boomers a day.
Yeah.
Over the age of
yes.
turning 65.
Yes, the number's staggering. And it's just, it continues to be at the forefront of discussion in terms of how the healthcare systems across the globe can handle that, that many people becoming, going to that next level in terms of their life. Um, and I think it's just like, how do we solve it? And we need to do it together. There's not one answer, but home care is certainly part of the solution.
And we could have started with this, but for the few that aren't familiar with Nurse Next Door, what is sort of a summary of the services that you provided? Nurse Next Door has been around for a while, very great brand recognition, but there
Yeah,
must be a couple people that are curious about the extent of the services that are
sure. Yeah, we've been
available.
around for 22 years, started here in Vancouver, Canada. Um, you know, 22 years later, we have over 400 locations in Canada, the US, Australia, England starting. Yeah, we provide all the way from companionship, maybe 3 hours, 3 times a week, all the way to end of life care. So that full spectrum of care we can do. And therefore, you can support anyone to be able to stay at home through the various aspects of what they're going through. And yeah, we work with families and make sure that, their loved ones are able to stay at home and have that quality of life that they deserve.
What does that mean to someone to be able to stay at home for those challenging times of their life? What does it mean for them and their families for you to be able to provide that service that they can stay in their home where they want to be? Is it monumental?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. Listen, you see so many families. It's very stressful, right? It's hard to navigate how to help someone who needs support at home. And when we're able to do that for a family, you're not just helping that person of the home you're going into, you're helping the entire family and you're taking that stress away from them. And that is very powerful.
Cool. Well, appreciate you and your organization and all the work
Thank
that
you.
that you do. Yeah, so you're excited about that, excited to grow.
It's
What
awesome. Yeah.
what do you have any expectations for the book and putting that out there?
Yeah. I'd love to uh, make a difference in a lot of people's lives. And yeah, sure, I'll put it out there. It'd be great if it became a bestseller.
That's it. See, that's
See,
what
that's hard to
I
say,
know.
right?
I know, but that's one of the. I mean, that's one of the growths that we do in these seats here, right? We have to kind of claim
Yeah,
our what
no,
we want and
thank
put
you
it
for
out
asking
there.
the question.
Yeah, my pleasure. Well, keep it up. We'll that this will help more people be aware of
Yes,
it.
thank you
So,
for having me.
yeah, my pleasure, and congratulations and kick some butt in 2024.
Thank you.